Folks, thanks so much for joining us. PopsToberFest is here. That's right. We've been talking about some different kooky, spooky, and scary movies, and this one's going to be a fun one. Tay Tay is in the house. That's right. My daughter's back with us. We're going to talk about one. This is really kind of our first one that's on the side of, like, I don't know, an actual scary horror movie. That's right. We're going to talk about Pet Cemetery, but we're also going to talk about the reboot, if you will, done 30 years later, which she had never seen. So it'll be her first watch of that. So we're going to talk about that. Tay, thanks for doing these with me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, guys. Happy to be back.
And folks, make sure you check out the little, there's a little tag there in the bottom there. She's going to be starting her own channel soon, but you get in on the front ground floor with that. Make sure you're subscribed so you can see how she starts to put together some content, some ideas that she has there. So, yeah, 1989 Pet Cemetery. Taylor has never heard the story. I have never told her. I don't think. I don't even know that I told her mom, but I saw Pet Cemetery in the theater, 1989. That is not the surprise. That is not the twist. The twist was I didn't see it with my girlfriend because my girlfriend was a senior in high school. I was a freshman in college. And it was like this weird thing about the timing. Could we go out? Whatever. She just turned 18, but her parents didn't want us to go out late, whatever. So fine. I just went out with some other girl. Now, it didn't turn into anything, but this girl was terrified during this movie. She was like on me. Now, Taylor will vouch. Taylor will vouch for me. I am not a huge fan of personal space violation. I do
Yeah,
not. If you
you're
are
not.
not in my inner circle, no.
Don't do
I'm a hugger.
it.
I'm a hugger, and I'm a friendly, outgoing person. But that's for the circle. Like, if you're not in that circle, she is not. She was not my girlfriend. She was just like, hey, we're gonna go hang out. That's fine. We were friends. It wasn't meant to be anything more than. But she was like all of my business, and I was like, this is awkward and uncomfortable and weird. And yeah, at the same
Yeah,
time, kind of made the movie more interesting for me because it was a scary movie, and you felt like I was actually having a scary movie experience. Because I don't usually get scared. I'm not usually shocked by anything, so it was interesting to have that kind of experience. Now,
It is the place where devoted pets are laid to rest.
What did we do tonight, Jud?
What we did, Lois, was a secret.
But nothing buried there ever rests in peace.
Come back to me, Gage.
Paramount Pictures presents Stephen King's chilling bestseller, Pet Cemetery, rated R. Now playing at theaters everywhere.
Pet Cemetery is an interesting film because there are so many things that it got right, and so many things I think are a complete sort of like disaster in this film. In both films, to be honest. We'll talk about the 89 one first. And if you're not familiar with this, you basically have a Stephen King adaptation that involves a family that's moving from the big city out into the country. He's there with his family. This is his young son, Gage. And you have a little setup with them moving there. He meets this neighbor, Fred Gwynne of the Munsters. That's right, his neighbor plays Jud. Great little bonding times talking about things. There's this pathway and there's this cemetery. It's out back. You can hike through it all. Oh, I got a little bit ahead of me on the photos. This is their cat church. And the twist is, first off, they live on this extremely close highway where these trucks that just barrel right through. So it's kind of a dangerous front yard. And the cemetery kind of has levels to it. So when the cat wanders into the road and gets killed, they bury the cat. But even the neighbor kind of feels bad for the young girl. She's going to feel sad because she's never had to deal with death and loss before. So he says, all right, well, I'm going to walk you back into the other part of the cemetery and we're going to bury your cat. And the cat basically comes back, and the cat comes back creepy and disturbed and weird. So it is an interesting twist that, that's kind of the premise, is this creepy, weird cemetery, hence the name, Pet Cemetery. And there's a little bit of a backstory with some other folks that have maybe been there or whatever. And the doctor does have a run into with another character that is definitely common in this movie, but kind of puts on the shelf in the other one. And that is, he is a doctor, and he's there at like an emergency clinic. There's been an accident, and this person that's brought in, Victor Pascal, and he's dying of this head trauma, as you can see here from this image. But he just starts talking to him, knows his name, starts talking to him, and then basically exists in the film that no one other than the audience can see. He's just there as a passenger for a large portion of the film. So how was my summary, Tay? And Anything I missed that's of major significance?
I mean, just the kids is a big significance in this film for sure. I think the impact that the whole experience has on the kids and how they're kind of debuted from this, just the experience moving into a new place, how their personalities differ as far as their age. So you have Ellie, who's a little bit older than Gage is. Gage is kind of portrayed as like a toddler, but he is a little bit older enough to where he can actually talk and vocalize. There are times where in the 1989 film it does seem like he is a little bit more like of a baby in the way that they handle themselves with him, but Ellie is supposed to be like this older kid. She's about 8 or 9, and she's just kind of, I didn't want to move here. She's like the normal kid of like being uprooted from what they know and having to move to this new place. And I feel like the story really focuses a lot on Ellie, and I think if you like take away from that in a lot of ways, it can take away from the story. So I think that child perspective is huge in this.
That's very true. And the wife, there's Gage. He's kind of supposed to be like a 2-year-old, but he kind of talks more than that. So maybe it's like supposed to be three and a
3 or
half or
4,
something.
yeah. Hard to
There's
tell.
the husband, the wife, and then there's Fred Gwynne from across the street. And this is one of those scenes I was telling you about with Victor Pascal kind of being in the background, talking to our characters, but the character doesn't see them. There's influence, but nothing else. So that's definitely kind of a factor. And I think you're right. It isn't unfair to kind of shortchange the impact of the character of the children, and then also the wife. Now, this is part of my criticism of both films: is the wife is suffering from some trauma in her background because she has a sister who was very ill, and I won't even try to cite, go down to the whole concept of how that all works, but it's done for some shock value, and she blames herself for her death, basically. And it's done in sort of a creepy, eerie, weird sort of way to kind of make you feel like you as an audience person can emotionally connect to, oh man, that's messed up. And that's all that
Yeah.
matters. The little bit of that happens. I feel like the family has, the different sort of like, so I think the father moving there doesn't really, he has this incident that happens with Victor Pascal. The mom comes to the table with this past PTSD issue and guilt with this sister.
Mm-hmm.
The young girl comes there. She doesn't really want to be there, but she loves this cat, adores the cat. So them bringing back the cat is that motivation. And then you have Gage as the other child. So that's the general gist of things. Like most Stephen King things, which we talked about, this, he does have he does have a cameo as the preacher. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he does lean into some tropes and stuff as he does. Obviously, we talk about this movie and the kids. He has a thing about kids, putting kids through trauma, horrible things, making kids villains, making kids, and then of course, in a scene like this, it's about bashing Christianity or about being this crazy, weird TV evangelist version of a preacher at the time, which is, it's all Stephen King tropes. It's not to say,
Just him.
uh,
Yep.
yeah, this is what you're going to pay for if you're going to go see a Stephen King project. Just know you're in for it. That's what you're getting. I think that the big twist, of course, which is really hard to watch, is it not, Taylor? It's hard to watch. It
Yeah.
is,
It is
it is,
hard.
it is hard to watch knowing that it happens. And I will admit, when you see it in the theater the first time, it's
Mm.
traumatizing. It was
Yeah.
shocking. Like, holy crap. Now, I think I had read Pet Sematary, or if not, I read
I
Pet
had
Sematary
to.
after this. So
Yeah.
I kind of almost wish people could have the experience of not knowing anything and seeing it firsthand, because it is
True.
done so well. I will say that it really surprised me a lot of how well they did with that. Now, the famous horror director George Romero was supposed to do this film, but of course that didn't work out. He ultimately went over and did another Stephen King adaptation called Monkey Shines, and that kind of
Okay.
paved the way for a young up and comer, basically director Mary Lambert, and she really was just enamored with King. Talks about how he was very, I don't know, he was very enthusiastic. He wanted to try to stay faithful, so she kind of bought in to the right things to get this job and do all of this. And I feel like the
Mhm.
movie does a pretty good job of staying pretty faithful to a lot of key elements. And I think that works out really well. Particularly, I like the fact that the Victor Pascal stuff exists so much in this one.
Yeah.
It adds so much creepiness to constantly have this character show up, right?
Yeah, I feel like having him in the background in random scenes, especially the influence that he has on Rachel towards the end, makes a huge difference because it almost shows how much he's really there. Because when he initially starts to appear in what Louis perceives as a dream, and he's talking, he is explaining that because you attempted to save me, I'm here to try to save you. So he's not meant to be a bad guy, but he's creepy looking. He's showing up in the shadows. He still has all of his scars from when he died. So it kind of like it gives that perception of like there's this dark figure and this dark element that's creeping around. Is he going to end up being a bad guy? Is he not really here to help with the family? So a lot of people not knowing that is interesting. I think the difference for me is that you almost wonder and you go back to try to figure out like in your mind like where like why Victor was chosen and what kind of the history that's behind this hidden cemetery with it possibly being involved with like a tribe of some sort. So is it something that's that influence or how was it kind of incorporated? So just because that's how I am as a reader, I'm always like diving into things like that. And so because I had read Pet Sematary after watching the 1989 film originally, and then I read the book, and then now I rewatched it just because of the conversation, but then I ended up watching the new version as well. It does help to grasp a lot more of what Stephen King is trying to portray by having the book. But like you said, that shock factor is definitely there for people in this type of movies when you haven't gotten that context from the book at all. But Victor is just, he's kind of that creepy character, and you're trying to understand if you're supposed to love or hate this guy because he's just odd, but he's actively trying to assist the family the best he can.
Thank you so much.
Think nothing of it. It's the end of the line for me, too. I'm not allowed any further.
Yeah, he does a really good job of sort of like being the messenger and the warning to everything. Such a good job of giving you enough to know that once Gage is hurt and killed in such a shocking, brutal way, that you feel like you can understand the dad's pain and why he's going to do it. You know, why he's going to go bury the kid. You know, you get it.
Yeah.
And you had this warning from this sort of gruesome character that keeps falling around. Like there couldn't be a crazier situation that you're kind of like faced with. And of course, then when Gage comes back, Gage is unhinged. He's a monster,
Yeah.
and he attacks the neighbor. And I will get to some of the pluses and minuses. And that's kind of the story. The kind of story is like, all right, well, he's attacking. The church is still there. What are you going to do? How's it going to play out? And and there's a line about, oh, he's not Ellie's cat anymore. He's your cat. You're the one that brought him back. And so he attacks him and just scratches his face, and you have flashbacks and stuff to other characters, and all of it works, I think, exceedingly well for the 1989 film. I do have sort of like I don't say issues with it. We'll get to more because I want to compare and contrast my issues with this one versus the other one.
That's good, yeah.
A little bit of creative liberty with the end of the movie because Gage, bringing Gage back is like shocking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the fact that they do that, and then of course you have this big ending too, where she gets killed as well, so he buries the wife, and how it's going to end. So it was sort of the creative liberties with the ending. It's not from the book. Was enhanced. It was exaggerated and enhanced for the 1989 version. Is there any other like things that really stood out to you of the original version before we kind of transition over to the 2019 version? Because I want to get to it's the same story, so we won't spend as much time here, but we'll just kind of be able to give my other thoughts. Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing is the connection to the cat and the importance of the cat and why that's kind of once that happens, how it transitions the rest of the story. So I think that really is impactful to kind of showcase the pet aspect of it, as how important a pet is for a child, why a dad would do this, why a neighbor would, even like Jud himself, the reason why he does it is because he's connected to Ellie. He feels like once he met Ellie, it was like this comfort. They're like, she's kind, and he doesn't want to see this child lose their pet that they love so much. And when you see how Louis handles it too, like even when Ellie's asking about him, like how's church doing? Is everything okay while she's away? He's trying his best to just be that father, like, yeah, he's somewhere, like, because he doesn't want to go too far.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to lie to her, but at the same time, he doesn't even know how to handle it. Death is a huge thing in this family. They don't know how to discuss it with their kids or to discuss it with each other. And so I think that impact of, from the point of church passing away, everything after that, it kind of showcases not only just the pet cemetery part of it, but also how death is impacting people and families, and what we need to do in order to open up those conversations, especially with children.
Yeah, I really, really do agree. That was a great assessment. And I think that in the reboot, the remake, that's 2019, 30 years later, Jason Clarke stars. I think you have some great folks that are really attached and involved in this film as well.
There was a mist about that place. Those woods belong to something else. Something that brings things back. But they don't come back the same.
I am really impressed with John Lithgow's version of Judd. I would have told you that would have been the one thing I would have really had a hard time envisioning them doing this. But basically, the story's pretty much the same. Everything is going to transcribe and go across pretty well, other than the fact that they do a different sort of approach with leaning more into the Indian history, the Wendigo stuff. This is them on like a little ceremonial march, burying a pet. This is Ellie. And so things are a little bit different in that regard before we get to a big twist here in a minute. And I think that it was interesting to see between the two films, we do actually kind of get more of the novel kind of plucked out. So in the original 89, you don't have a lot of the Indian burial ground, the Wendigos. You lose some of that. And then in this new film, we end up with a lot more complexity with that mythology. And then we have, for some reason, we decided to make a major twist. And I wanted your thoughts on that, because in this one, and they set you up brilliantly, right? They set, when you're watching this movie and the truck is coming and you see
Oh
Gage
yeah,
darting toward the highway and you already
you think.
see Ellie out there with the cat and you see church in the road. What was your
Mhm.
brain? What was going on in your mind's eye of how this is all going to play out?
I definitely didn't expect it after watching the original film and knowing how the original story is. So it added more of that impact that we were talking about with the previous film, like the not knowing and seeing what ended up happening. So at first I thought maybe it was a circumstance kind of similar to how the original movie is. So in the original film, when they first get to the house, Gage runs out and they're able to save him. And then that's when Jud's like,
Yep.
oh, it's a dangerous road, be careful. So I thought maybe it was something like that. Like Gage was going to like get ready to start doing it. He was going to be
Yep.
saved. Everything was fine. And then you have Ellie, and she's on the other end of this road, and she's only going out there because church is coming back. So
Yep.
another influence and key of how important this animal is in this story, and how important it is to Ellie as a child. So I think that whole sequence on her, like her birthday party and everything, and she's already moping and upset because church isn't there. So it's like that whole scene, the way that it played out was a huge shock. I wasn't ready for it. I was like, oh wow, that's different. Okay, well, so now and then it changes the whole story from there as far as it being different in a lot of ways than the original was.
Yeah, I'm mixed on that. Ellie comes back and not Gage, obviously.
I remember my birthday party. Church was out on the road. I was so happy he came home. there was a truck. And everything went black.
So
Yep.
the first thing that you'll notice is they can do and they can be more creative with her as an undead version. So she can be more dynamic with her emotions. She can have like almost has like one eye that's not quite right all the time.
Droopy, kind of like the cat.
Yeah, she's almost like she almost looks like she kind of had a stroke, and she's just she's kind of just more believable as something that's also formidable. So when Ellie attacks Judd, that is a much more believable scene. That's one of my biggest pet peeves with the '89 version. It's like a toddler-sized child. Gage is this little tiny thing, scalpel or not. Cut your heel.
Yeah.
Sure, you may not be able to stand on that foot. Oh, you're going to fall down or
Could still
whatever.
react.
But then the fact that it jumps on top of him, it's like, no, you just kick it off. Like you're an adult man. It's like over 200 pounds. It's not even going to be a question. It's the most absurd element. The fact that they do switch that, I'm mixed because now we're definitely away from source material. We're away from what's comfortable for people, but it makes more sense and it creates a completely different dynamic. And the dynamic gets even crazier and more strange. However, one thing that does get lost is the jogger story, the little backstory, the guy that is warning him before, and in this movie is just sort of like forgotten about, right? So in this one, they change him completely. Let me see here. Get Victor. Obsa Ahmad is his name, and he is the new version of Victor. I was trying to find the picture. I had the picture and I lost it. And it's just really one quick scene. You don't really have him around much. And that was kind of a weird, that's what you sacrifice. So we got more information with the Indian burial ground and the Wendigo and sour. Like that actually makes the story make even more sense and believable. But we lose the warning. We lose the character going around. What are your thoughts about losing the character? I almost feel like we didn't need to lose the character, but we did.
Yeah, he's definitely not as focused in and not as prominent as he is with the others. It seems like they put a lot more of that horror context on this film with Rachel even. So like in the original, the 89, we see Victor even trying to like assist Rachel when she's moving around and when she's trying to come back because she feels like something's wrong. We don't have that here. Like they are still focusing on the kid connection to him, which is something that's very common with the paranormal. A lot of people say that when it comes to like ghosts or the paranormal, kids have a tie to that kind of paranormal aspect. They can see things that maybe adults can't. So Victor is tied to Gage more so than he is doing anything else. So like Gage is saying his name, he's having nightmares, he's freaking out, but he's kind of popping up here and there, but it's definitely not as prominent as we saw. And the way that his influence is, it's not as important. So it's almost like he's just kind of sprinkled in there just so that they can say, oh, the character's still there. But it wasn't as impactful as it is of the original film. Not saying that it isn't done well, but like you said, I don't feel like it was necessary for them to cut it as much as they did.
Yeah, so I'm a firm believer that most things in life are trade-offs, right? So the trade-off to Ellie now being the person that's come back and not Gage is the one that is having some sort of dreams and connections, whether it be Victor or whatever. But Gage is like a child who can barely speak. So that piece is sort of lost. So you end up with the sort of the pull, the allure back to doing right or trying to fix things and saving things that came from Victor through Ellie's visions and then helping Rachel is completely sacrificed in this. And you end up with kind of a completely different journey now into, well, you'll do anything to bring them back, but what are the costs? And the problem is they bring her back and she is, it leans more into a completely different horror movie. Like now we have a different movie from this point on.
Yeah.
So now it becomes more, he's having to live with this more than the wife. Rachel doesn't want much part of it. And it ends up being very traumatic as when she's attacking, because she's a bigger, formidable thing than what Gage would have been, even though Gage did do it in the first movie as well. But all of this stuff lends itself to be a much scarier film and a much darker, kind of evil, crazy, twisted finale. So what are your thoughts on the Ellie change? at the grand scheme of things, because it really is it changes the whole dynamic of the movie in a lot of ways.
It does. And I understand, like you said, why they do it. Gage doing it in the original, I just took it as the story. Like, that's how the book is written. So it is what it is. It was very rewatching it now that I'm older, it was very like Chucky-esque. Like the way that they were portraying him, the very small proportion, still attacking a grown person. You're like, okay. But it was the story. So you still you grasp it and stuff. But it was like we have to swap it. So like you have such a strong impact with the death of Gage, but then you don't have a very strong impact with him coming back as far as like this creepy-esque murderer thing that he is. Whereas with Ellie, you still have that strong impact of her death, but the impact that she has when she comes back is completely different. It's such a strong element to the horror that they are trying to get with this film, alongside all of the elements they bring forward with Rachel's past changing, and her trauma is way more intense than it was in the previous film. It's showing that it's not just the burial ground at this point. Like, it transitions to the house. Like, the house has this essence of evil, and this whole property where the cemetery is evil. And they kind of touch on that a little bit, because when they're talking with Jud about the property and they ask how expansive is this, and he's just like, well, it's pretty far, and she's like, so that includes the pet cemetery, and he explains yes, and she goes, anything else? And he doesn't touch on the burial ground right then and there. He just kind of says it's like woods and stuff, it's not even that interesting. So it shows that the burial ground and the evil and the stuff that is behind it extends the whole property line. So that makes you understand a little bit more about the horror and the craziness that this family is experiencing throughout the film, because I feel like it's not just the burial ground that it sticks to, because Rachel is even experiencing stuff when they first get to the house. So
yeah, I've wondered about, in the rewatch, I was thinking, I wonder how much is supposed to be because of that, the curse of the property, the burial grounds, whatever, or it's just the manifestation of her trauma from her past with the sister thing. I think the biggest thing with Ellie is because of the way they change it and they switch it with Gage, is it goes from being the curse of the resurrection and the fact that it will be set right through death and dismay and bringing back something evil. They really make Ellie like a serial killer, because now
for sure.
she doesn't just go for Jud, she's strategically attacking the mother. Like, so there's a line in the reboot that's like, it's okay, daddy. No, what is something about not wanting her here? She's like, it's okay, I don't want mommy here
to hear you
either.
anymore. Yep.
And I'm like, okay, so now we've changed the whole thing from just being an evil being just doing evil things. Like, that's kind of what the premise was in the first movie. And then even the backstories with, oh, this happened when we were kids. We buried, so-and-so Tommy was buried there. Tommy was never the same. And all of that. Now it's become more gruesome, like serial killer type stuff.
Sure.
And this one, man, does it go off the chart with how gruesome and crazy it gets, right? I mean, you had to be just like, I can't believe they're going to keep going deeper. It just keeps going. They bring Ellie back, who's going to attack the mother. And then it's like, what happens with the mother? Oh, she doesn't really attack the dad. Exactly. Oh no, yeah, she does. She knocks him out and then drags mom to some. I'm just like, this is crazy. It just keeps going and stacking and stacking.
Crazy. Yeah.
What were you thinking, and how did you feel about all that?
It was a lot darker. It's it's so much more of a horror film at that point, because the fact that they implemented the older child. She's more capable. Having that capability and the strategic elements that go into it, like you said, of a serial killer. Like, you can tell she's planning this. Jud sees her in the window. He already knows. He's like, she's already planning to come after me. I have to prep myself. The mom already senses something's up. I don't like this. The crazy aspect of Louis here is really what gets me in, and it's kind of across the board for both films, but it all comes back to like a father and how they're going to handle a situation like this. He's so in denial that this is wrong, that to even the point when his daughter said, like, I don't want mommy here either, that doesn't even faze him. Like, he's just like, oh no, don't talk like that. I'm like, she's standing there,
Yeah.
the way she's looking, like I don't know. It was one of those situations, but she plans it to the point of she walks past the room where they're talking and then runs, and Dad thinks she's upset. It lures him away so that she can go after Mom. And it's just, it's so chaotic. And even when he discovers what happens to everybody along the way, it's his reaction isn't, it's almost like, I wasn't right. Like, now I'm realizing I was wrong. Like, this, I shouldn't have done this. But it's not into the sense of like, I have to stop her. That's why it was kind of like interesting to kind of grasp his character's take on this. Is he's slowly getting into it. The only time that I really feel like we see that is when he puts Gage away. Like, he's like, stay here, don't open up for anybody else, like, be safe, kind of, is like the fatherly part starts to come forward. But other than that, like, he's so focused on like, I have to keep her alive. It's almost like it's just, there's nothing else there to kind of give him that moral compass throughout the ending of the story.
Yeah, I think that Stephen King has been, from novel to the first film to this one, they're trying to dabble with the metaphor and allegories about resurrection and spirituality and an afterlife and all of that, and that he's Mr. Science Guy and reason. You can't tell your kid there's a heaven or the pets are in heaven because we don't honestly believe
Yeah.
that. I don't believe anything happens. And they're trying to work this character through that. And the problem is, in the first movie, is he sort of kind of ends up in a place of like, still kind of hopeful. I can try to figure out how to get my life back together at the end, and then of course that's how the movie ends traumatically, right? It's off camera. In this one, it just becomes a serial killer movie, but has a genius plan of what it wants, and way bigger and darker into what happens next, kind of thing. I have to be honest,
Oh
I
yeah.
kind of like both. I like both pieces, and I like there's positive and negative of both films, right? So I think the first movie
Yes,
feels more
absolutely.
faithful. We
Mm-hmm.
lost a lot more of the realism of a Pet Cemetery, Indian Burial Grounds, and the Wendigo, and that you could bury people, but the ground could basically get sour, so therefore you don't want to bury things there because they could come back.
Yeah.
And it turned out bad. Don't do that. And then in this one, we explain more of that. We get more of that, but because we have to deal with this toddler attacking people, like, well, that's kind of silly. They're just going to kick
Yeah.
this toddler aside. He wouldn't be able to kill 2 or 3 people like he does. We'll switch it, make it the girl. It's like, okay, well, yeah, but she's a girl. She's older and she's gonna remember more, and she's gonna obviously have issues with, and the mom's gonna
She
freak out
plays
more. Like,
on that.
holy cow!
Yeah.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
plays
very
that.
much so.
The mental play, like her sitting in the bathtub talking to him, like
Hmm.
that, it adds to that horror factor. Like her facial expressions, the way she's like cloaking around the darkness, like when she walks out and Rachel sees her, like that whole thing, it adds to the creepiness. Like the fact that they chose the older child, it adds more to it. It adds more of a horror element, and I feel like they did so well with that.
And to be honest, I think the second one, the cast is better. The
Yeah.
performances are better. They're given better stuff to
Sure.
work with. I think Mary Lambert was just an inexperienced director who was like, it's fine for its time. It was creepy and scary for its time.
Yeah,
I know
of
that,
course.
yes, the child Chucky factor is exactly the right way to explain it. But Jason
Yeah.
Clarke is phenomenal in this. He gets a lot better emotional response moments in this one. Obviously, Lithgow is phenomenal. Fred Gwynne was one of the best parts in the original one. But
Yes, I agree with
really,
that.
and I'm trying to I'm trying to remember how to pronounce her name here. So I apologize if it's Jete Lawrence. It's Jetae, and she is phenomenal as Ellie. It's just absolutely spectacular in her role. And I don't think, as I'm looking just to confirm, that she's really done a ton of stuff or anything like that. She just, she's known for this, and she's
Hmm.
kind of gone into stuff kind of behind the camera. She was in a couple other films around that time, and that's it. But she played the young Barbara Gordon in an episode of Gotham, some
Hmm.
stuff like that. But man, she was so good in this movie. It's phenomenal, and definitely a kind of thing where I'll let Taylor tell her scores. I'm still very solid on both of them. To me, they're both around a 3 out of 5.
Hmm.
Me leaning up and down from that depends on how you want to look through your lens. So if you want to watch the old one and you can't give it any grace for being, 40 years, 35 years old,
Yeah,
then you're probably going to have a lot more hangups with this movie, right? So if you can't get the fact that, Gage is supposed to be this, 3.5-year-old, and it's faithful to the story. I don't want to tell you, blame Stephen King then, because it was his problem, not, Mary Lambert didn't get
yeah,
all-star cast. That's, Fred
yeah,
Gwynne was not in anybody's mind's eye, just to be honest. We all know him now as the Munsters and all that, but even when that happened, he had been in My Cousin Vinny as the judge, but he wasn't
yeah,
like a Hollywood superstar or anything like that. So it was like a think of it as a no-name cast, because pretty much that's what it was.
yeah.
With the reboot, they put so much money behind the reboot to bring stuff in. They spent $20 million, which is the right kind of budget to have, by the way, Paramount. Just so you guys know, go back to that. Make 20 million, and when you make 100, you're made such a good profit you can make more movies. The cast was solid, execution was solid, and they went creepier and darker, which, so I'm gonna leave them both around the same score, and you guys have to adjust on your expectation levels.
Sure.
I'm sort of that's kind of I want to say mid, so I want to feel like I want to go to 2.5, but I also want to give them both their credit for what they did do positively. So I'm gonna split the difference and just go 3 out of 5 for both, and let everyone else decide. What say you, Tay?
So I'm about the same. I will say I feel like the newer film does more things to interest me and grasp my attention, because of the fact that it turns it into such a strong horror film in comparison just to like a supernatural, which is more of the aesthetic of the original.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, the original sticks to the faithful story. That's how Stephen King wrote it. It's not anybody else's fault. It may not make sense to have this killer toddler, but that's also something that's been done before. So it's not like it was the first movie around that era to do things like that. Like I said, Chucky's esque is very, very basic to kind of to give an idea of how this plays out. But the original, um, because it sticks to that, it does make it to where it leans more of that basic 3. Like it's not super impressive, but it sticks to the original story. There are certain things that I do enjoy about it. Um, but then you get to the newer one, and I think it's a mixture for me. I want to say I'm going to lean more towards a 3.5 for the 2019. I don't think it's quite a 4 for me, just because it did take away from a lot of the original story, but it did introduce a lot of interesting elements for me. The Wendigo tribes getting more attention and more story made it to where you grasp more of why it is the way it is. It's not just, oh, it's here, that's it. So kind of getting more information on that, um, made it to where I had a lot more background to go off of, a lot more foundation. And I feel like it was getting more intense emotions out of Louis made it a more developing story for me.
Agreed.
Because I feel like his interaction with everybody, Judd, his interaction with Ellie before and after, like all of that was so much more intense because, and I think part of it is because she's the older child, he's able to have those emotions more. Whereas whenever it happens with Gage, he doesn't really interact with him afterwards because he doesn't realize all that's happening. He's like sleeping half the time. So, so I feel like
Yeah, you're right, and
because we
that is
got
a
to
very
have
good
that,
difference. Yeah,
yeah,
you're right. It's a very good difference between the two, because in the original '89, Louis doesn't realize that he's attacked Judd, and this one happens that way too. But there's so much more interaction with him with Ellie that it makes more
yeah.
sense, and it makes Ellie and Louis both have two different story arcs now that we're working through. So you have the giant overarch. What will Louis actually end up doing? Then Ellie, the serial killer. In the original one, it's just Louis trying to figure out what's going on. Gage is this killer toddler thing running around. There's no real
Yeah,
story arc there. It's nothing else really going. So
really.
yeah, interesting. And I don't think in the original, right? Because when Rachel goes back, doesn't she leave Ellie at home? Ellie doesn't come back, right?
Ellie's the only living family member because she stays with the
Right.
grandparents. She comes
Then when they
back
leave,
to
right?
investigate. Yep. And
Yep.
so that,
Yep.
in that sense, that story arc, she's the last, she's still alive. She doesn't die in the original. Same goes for the book. But in this, it's
They bring Gage back
just,
to have the
yes,
crazy
it's
ending. So
chaotic.
yeah.
It's chaotic.
So the final spoiler we had to give you a warning for. So if you don't want the very final spoiler warning for the 2019 movie, because it's so radical, you almost just can't believe it. So if you don't want that, you've never seen it, come back and let us know after you've seen it if you want, whatever. But we're going to talk about that last scene. So there's a final scene. The movie's basically Ellie's done her thing. They drug Rachel out there. And then right about the time Louis finally wrestles Ellie to the ground to finally win, has a shovel. Nope. The exhumed, resurrected Rachel takes one of the metal crosses and just spears him through the chest, so they kill him too. And the movie ends with the 3 zombied family members coming to the car because she brought Gage back to the house, and then Louis put him in the car, locked him in. So you see the 3 zombies coming, and you hear the car click open, bloop, 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 like they're going to just get to Gage. So what do they do next? Yeah,
We don't know.
it was dark.
Yeah.
It was dark, wasn't it? It is dark. That is,
It's insane. It's like, so adding all of those darker elements and more of a horror to it makes it that much more of an intense film for me in comparison. So
100%.
I feel like because of that interest level increasing for me for this, I can't give it the same because it has so much more emotion and so much more story arcs and so much that it brings to the table in comparison to the original film. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a parent. I don't know if that's why it impacts in so many different ways, because the connection between the children and their pets and the children with each other and the parents with the children, and then you see like I was saying before, the connection that Louis has when Ellie comes back, all of that play out, the fact that they held on to that, it develops a whole different side of it. I think that's part of the reason why Louis doesn't want to admit it to himself. He's like, no, this is my child. I'm giving her a bath. I'm tucking her in. She's saying, I love you.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't do anything to him. He wakes up in the morning and she's just not in bed, but she's Ellie. She's dancing around. Like it adds so much more intense character development that we didn't get in the original. And that partially is because Gage is young. They had a young kid actor who's trying to portray this stuff. You can't get that kind of personality out of a little kid like that. It wouldn't portray that same way on screen. So because they switched to Ellie, it adds so much more. And I feel like because of that, I was able to enjoy the second movie that like a lot more intensely.
So what I wish they had done, so if reverse the clock and I actually got the phone call for them to ask Pops, what would you do? I'd be like, okay, you're so close to perfection. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to anger some fans of the first movie. So don't do that. So what you do is with the reboot, change the names. So it's a completely different family, and then just switch houses. So some old man has moved there on the property where the Pet Cemetery is, and this new family lives across the street, and they move in, and you can have allusions to the first film, because obviously that's all still there, right? It's just a continuation of the Pet Cemetery universe. We've now just fast forward a couple decades, or whatever the case may be, and just change the names and change that, and you could have all the same dynamics play out, and then I think people would have been more receiving to the remake. Because if there's any criticism, it's usually people having like, oh, you changed the story, you changed this, you changed that. I'm like, you just didn't need to. If you had just changed, like, you know what I'm saying? It's like you just continue the Pet Cemetery universe. Now, I'm not watching Pet Cemetery Bloodlines, which is like a TV spinoff from it. I've only heard bad things about it. I'm not interested in that. You guys do what you do, you folks. I'm not throwing rocks if you love it. I'm just saying that's what I would have done to kind of. So, because I think overall I agree with Taylor. I mean, I up and say, look, it went right up against COVID. And it just ruined all the momentum to do it right. I think if you had just done those kind of names with the way that movie ended, it would have made people want another film, and it would have been great for them. And it made decent money. I'm not being totally critical. I actually liked the 2019 film way more on rewatch than I thought I was going to. I definitely come from a nostalgia place with the original one. Maybe I am scoring it too high, but I feel like they are for what they are. Stephen King adaptations and not. So it's definitely a creepier, spookier movie for us. We've been doing mostly kids movies and sort of like tween movies and stuff like this. This is our first like darker, edgier movie. So yeah, definitely something different. That's for sure, huh?
Most definitely. I think like it was good to kind of get more into that darker sense, but Like we've already discussed this. This was my first watch of the 2019, so all of it was unexpected. It was so much more intense, and I was not expecting it to get as dark as it did. And I really did enjoy it. I think because of it being a first watch, I feel like it added that much more to it.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. Well, thanks for doing this with me, folks. Like I said, tagged her in the description. She'll have content coming soon. You can watch the PopsToberFest playlist, watch all these different reviews going on. We have going on the whole month of October, all sorts of different movies with different folks. So make sure you check that out. Hey, listen, if you like what we're doing, subscribe, continue to be a member, do what you can do to support the channel. I appreciate your time. Thank you for watching. Thanks again to Tay. You guys take care. Be blessed.